Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me for our Division BC season kickoff for Virginia Science Olympiad. For those of you that are new to Virginia Science Olympiad, my name is Emily Owens, and I am the state director. And I'm excited this morning to share with you our plans for the year, answer any questions that you have at this point in time before registration kicks off later in the month. Just a brief agenda for you today so you kind of know what we're going to cover. I'll give a brief overview of the program for new coaches and schools. We'll talk about what our priorities were going into the season with some of the decisions that we made. We'll talk about what resources are available at the beginning of the season. Then we'll get a little bit more into the specifics of the season of Science Olympiad with the events that we are going to be running, as well as regional and state tournaments. And then some of the nitty gritty that we know is going to be coming up for you in the next couple of weeks with registration and pricing. And then at the very end, talk about some other opportunities that live outside of VASO that your teams may choose to pursue within the wider network of Science Olympiad. So for those of you that are tuning in live, please feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat. I'll address them as I can, and also we'll pause for questions when we've got them. So for those of you that are new to Science Olympiad, first, welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope that you are as excited as I am about jumping into this season, looking at the new events. Even for those of us that are veteran coaches or veteran event supervisors, new seasons always bring new challenges, new enjoyments for us with the different events. So just know that every coach, whether they've been coaching for 20 years or they're brand new this year, there's always something new that we get to kind of work on together. So if you're so new to Science Olympiad that you can't really even envision what it is, know that Science Olympiad is one of the premier science tournament organizations in the United States with chapters of it across the country. It's an international nonprofit organization. So for those of you that have ever seen stuff posted about like the national tournament, there's a team from Japan that even comes and competes. And the whole organization is devoted to improving the quality of science education. I'm a science teacher. Many of our coaches are science teachers, and we know that there's only so many things that you can do in the classroom. So this is an enrichment opportunity that goes above and beyond what we can do in our classroom time. There's an exposure to many different fields of science, many of which we don't offer classes for in most typical middle and high school programs, or they might be more specific or more advanced than what they see in their general curriculum. So we look at it as like a collaboration between schools and Science Olympiad as like an extracurricular opportunity that we get to focus on coordinating with schools, meeting national curriculum standards, and kind of supplementing what our students are getting in their standard school day. Just so we're clear, it is not a science fair. So we're not asking students to create their own projects. There are set rules for different events that they'll participate in. So they're not like coming up with an experiment and, collecting data and designing a board to present. It is a team-based competition instead, where students are preparing with team members to compete in a wide variety of activities. It's not a particular emphasis on any one field of science. So you may have heard of things like chemistry Olympiad or biology Olympiad. Those are different. Those obviously specialize. They are often have individual components. Everything in Science Olympiad, like I said, is team-based. And we do have chemistry events and biology events, but we also have engineering and we have physics and we have earth science and space science. So it really does cover a wide range of things in STEM. And as I will keep saying over and over, Science Olympiad is a team event, and that's probably the thing I love most about it. It's not a competition for individuals. Everything we do is a team. Even the stuff that I do, just getting things ready for tournaments, is team-based, which is great. It is the ultimate collaborative experience in science, which we know as practicing scientists, like that's what students have to be able to do. And Science Olympiad facilitates that for us. So, within that team structure, if you're starting out and thinking about what this could look like for you, a team refers to a maximum of 15 students from a given school going to a competition, and among those max 15 students, covering up to 23 events, depending on the tournament, at a given time. They kind of run like a track meet. So if that's more your wheelhouse, or you're familiar with that from your days in school, there's a bunch of events going on at the same time. Someone's, running the 1600 at the same time that someone else is doing the long jump, and then there's maybe a relay after that. And so things are happening in parallel, but like collectively, right? You have a score totaled for a school, um, from all these different events that take place. And that's what Science Olympiad is. So we have an astronomy event that might be happening at the same time that a chemistry event is happening. And then your team is also testing something they built. Different kids are doing different events at the same time. And then at the end, it's a collective score representing their whole team. They're never doing events by themselves. Every single event is intended to be a partner-based event. Sometimes there's 3 people in an event. That doesn't mean that students can't do an event by themselves. If you are especially fielding a smaller team and you just want to like encourage the interests of the students that you have. But it's always more fun when it's with a partner. So that's what you can have per team. 15 students make up that one team and they can cover that wide range of events. Schools, especially our more veteran schools or schools that have a larger population, they're allowed to field up to 3 teams for regionals. So you could have up to 45 of your students competing at a Science Olympiad regional tournament. Again, you don't have to have 15 members to field a team. You could field a team with 5. You could field a team with 10. Um, but those teams are in isolation from each other, so they like can't cross over partners with other teams. So depending on their interests, you may decide how you want to like set up your teams. This is a more complicated question or like task. So we devoted an entire video to it on our resources page, which I'll point out to you later, about event assignments that really gets into the nitty-gritty of that. But if you're just starting out, I would really encourage you to think about fielding one team of up to 15 students. And if you have more interest beyond that, then I'm happy to talk with you, work with you, share that video with you, to help you navigate building more than one team. But for those veteran coaches, nothing has changed in what I've just said so far. It's still up to 3 teams for regionals, and up to 15 students per team. Like I said, those events cover a wide range of science topics. So you may see, especially in larger programs or just based on student interest, that students can develop expert topic areas. So maybe you have a student who's really, really interested in chemistry. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm going to keep going back to that because I'm a chemistry teacher. So that we have a variety of chemistry events. We in Division C we have chemistry lab and we have forensics and we have material science, and maybe that set of events is something that a particular student like really, really wants to do. There's the pathway for that. But we also could have expert builders, people who are building devices, bringing them to test at tournaments. It allows them to have a wide range of options if that's what they want, but then also to like specialize in areas if they'd rather do that. And that's decisions you get to make with your team. Students compete in all their events with a partner or 2, like I mentioned, and then they receive medals by event. But then the team score at the end is tallied up across all the events for that team, and then teams can progress to the next level of competition. So your school will have the opportunity at the regional tournaments to qualify for the state tournament, and then the state tournament we have teams that are eligible to qualify for the national tournament. All right, so that's kind of an overview of what we've got in terms of what Science Olympiad is. Team-based, a wide range of activities, and multiple levels of competition across the season, starting with our regionals that are everyone's participating in that start in January. So everything we're doing up to that point is just to get ready for those regional tournaments. And one of our priorities for this season is to continue putting on what we think are great tournaments. So today I'm going to be sharing with you some of the ways that we're adapting our regional offerings to fit our team's needs. There's not a ton of change for those of you that are veteran coaches, but you'll see what we've done with two of our regionals to accommodate some other events that are happening outside of our schedule. We also like solicited and listened to feedback on how we structure, assign, and train event supervisors from schools. So that's one of the things that we take a lot of pride in is the quality of our tournament experiences with the writers of our events and the supervisors of our events and putting together a good experience for our students. We also continue to prioritize supporting our teams and coaches, especially new teams and coaches. Um, we continue to see interest in expansion outside of Nova, particularly through our VASO outreach initiative. And then also last year we started what I think is an awesome resource, our resources page. And we're continuing to develop that, update it for this season. And I do think that has been a very strong support tool for our teams and coaches. So I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. If you are wondering where to even begin, the resources page, in my opinion, is a great place to start. So you can get to that from our website, virginiaso.org. And then under middle and high school, if you hover over that, then there's resources. This is the page of our website that I visit the most because I'm not the only one posting things, right? I work with a bunch of other people who develop great resources, great videos, and I'm often linking to things on this page when I send coach emails. So you can see that we have resources for coaches, for event supervisors, and for mentors and parents. And so if you're a new coach starting out, or even a veteran coach who's just wanting to like refresh your memory, we have selected videos that we made over the course of last season and actually some this summer that are specific to VASO's program, Virginia's program. We know that there are national resources out there, but all the videos that we've linked on this resource page, like we have created at our level to make sure that we're being specific to what we do here, including a new intro video to like what is Science Olympiad. So that's a great watch. I mean, I made it, but I think it's good. And gets more like specific about the details of what Science Olympiad is more than like the quick overview that I did at the beginning of this call. So when you navigate to the resources page, just know that like most of our pages have a picture at the very top of them, but if you scroll down, then you can see exactly what I was showing in those slides. So key things I want to highlight on that resources page. This was something that I started last year, and I find it really useful, especially as I'm now going to be writing another year of emails. We keep a folder of all the coach emails that I send during the season for easy reference. It's one of the things that's right at the top of the coach section. So, coach, other resources, it says season 2025-26 coach emails. You can see all of them there. We also have an intro playlist of smaller segment videos. So like I said, we have a new one that I filmed this summer that is all about Division BC, what is Science Olympiad. We have a great video that Karen and Ian Emmons put together about reading rules, and we have some excellent like support videos for build events, just like what does that mean as a build event. And we also have a video about creating team event assignments, which is what I was referring to earlier with trying to organize 15 students across 23 events for every team. In the event supervisors category of the resources page, there's actually a lot of information on this that is useful not just for event supervisors, but for coaches and for teams too. We have some excellent videos about how to run build events, which is nice for context, if you are new to what a build event is, what does that mean when we ask you to build a hovercraft and bring it, to competition? What does that process look like for how build events are run on tournament day? We also link to things like their score sheets, which may be helpful for practicing and or wrapping their heads around what the rules are asking. And then we do have training videos. So again, if you kind of want to know the full picture before you get to a tournament, you can see the information that we provide to our event supervisors. For those of you that are veteran coaches, you may recall that we ask teams to provide event supervisors at tournaments, and that will continue this year. However, one of the key pieces of feedback we got was that last year we tried to do training videos that just anybody could watch to get ready for their volunteer job as an event supervisor. And it's nice that we have those, but the ask was that we wanted to bring back the live sessions. So we're going to do those this year as well. And so we'll update those training videos and also like include live opportunities. Under the mentors and parents section, there are, again, some helpful videos. Excuse me. In particular, though, we outline the policies that are really crucial for your team to be aware of when it comes to what parents can and cannot do. So, when it comes to constructing devices, what that means for how parents are allowed to support. There's a detailed video about that. There's also things about just general safety and other tournament FAQs that parents and mentors may find useful. But again, it's also potentially useful for you as a coach. So really the resource page, everything on the resource page can be useful for coaches and teams, but we separate out the things on the left that are really only useful for coaches, like my emails, and some of the like organizational stuff that only you will do. One of the ways that's easy to know when we post a new video is just to subscribe on our YouTube channel. So all the playlists on the resources page, you can see here, for example, we have a Division BC coach intro playlist that has this video with about reading the rules that Karen and Ian made. But when we make other videos, if you want to know when we do that, subscribe on YouTube. And I'll also try to share out via email when we have a new video or a new resource that you might find particularly useful. All right, what questions do we have about the resources page at this moment before we're going to start getting more into like the events and rules for the season? How do coaches provide event supervisors? So when we get closer to that, we will, that's part of the portal that we will have coaches submit names and contact information of like willing adults in their team community who could run events for us. So it will be event specific. We'll have a certain number of event supervisor asks per team. And then we'll go through and make those assignments based on how many teams you are fielding so that we can cover all of our events. So it will be a coach initiated submission in the portal, but we don't open that for a little bit until after registration gets going, just so people have time to build those teams and communities and know what parents might be available as resources. On that page, the resources page, we do have videos about like what is an event supervisor, and that was partially created as like a recruitment tool for you all, to help find parent volunteers. Coaches are welcome to be event supervisors, but we also know that you have other duties on tournament day, and it would be easier, frankly, if you had supervisors that weren't you. So parents are a great option, and we know that we have a wide, strong STEM community of parents who are knowledgeable about different areas that our events cover. For the portal itself, we'll talk about that when we get to registration, but just know that right now it doesn't open until registration starts. And so you'll start to when once you get into it, you'll see that we have like tabs for like event supervisors, things like that. All right. Hopefully, everyone has already downloaded the national rules. They dropped earlier this week. Here are the color covers for this year. One thing I wanted to point out is that when you download the national rules, especially if you're Division B, you'll note that it says grades 6 through 9 on the front cover. That is that doesn't mean that we're changing what we do in Division B in Virginia. So our policy is that Division B can include grade 5 here in Virginia because we have a lot of elementary schools that go up to grade 6. So we have elementary schools that field teams of 5th and 6th graders. We also only allow ninth graders in the rare instance in which a school terminates in ninth grade, like a middle school or like a junior high school. So for the vast majority of our schools that would participate in Division B, it's actually like grades 5 through 8 in Virginia. So just don't be thrown by the fact that the cover says 6 through 9. It's more just that like there's a wide range of different school alignments, right? School plans across the country. We have a team composition policy about that on our website. But like I said, this for those of you that are new, like don't be surprised by that. Someone brought it up to me this year, and I hadn't realized actually that it had those grades on it just because I'm always thinking 5 through 8 here in Virginia. If you're an experienced coach, I know you've likely downloaded the rules, but it's worth everybody reviewing the rules, even if this is like your 20th year coaching, both for your students, your teams, to be well prepared, but like don't assume anything. And the reason why I say that is because there are sometimes changes in things that haven't changed for years. And the key one on my mind, again, chemistry person, that's the realm I live in, they've changed how they've done like the lab equipment list. So that was like a big change, a big formatting change in the rule book for those events. So we're not going to get into the nitty gritty of the rules in this call. We have that whole video about reading the rules. But just it is worth your time to just like review it. Or that can be a really great intro team building activity is like having students together reading through rules, maybe with coaches as support if they're like Division B. But don't assume anything like in the rules has stayed the same. Like you should actually look at them. You'll also note in the back of the rule book that there is like an ad page from the Science Olympiad store that does highlight some options available through the National Science Olympiad organization, including packs that have notes and practice tests. They sell national test packets from past years. Um, these are not unique, obviously, to Virginia, but they, are meant to align with the rules that Nationals puts out. So peruse it if you would like. Just wanted to make you aware of these offerings that they've put out for 2026. And speaking of 2026, with the events, I wanted to remind everybody of the events that we are running here in Virginia. So this is the Division C event slate. You'll notice that they're listed in groupings. This is how they're like scheduled. So Group A is all scheduled together on our tournament schedules. Group B happens all at the same time. Group C happens all at the same time. If you watch the video on making event assignments, I go through some very specific examples about how to like make sure you don't double book a student, but these are our groups. You'll see that there are 23 events listed. The ones that are in red are ones that we will only run in Virginia at VASO tournaments at two specific tournaments, the National Ready Regional, which I will talk about later, and at the state tournament. So most of our other regionals will have 17 events run. This is for Division C. And then in Division B, similar groupings. They do have some sister events. And then we also, again, have 17 events that we will run at at all of our tournaments, and then the ones in red will only run at our National Ready Regional and at the state tournament. They may also run at invitationals, but those are not FASO tournaments. We have a page on our website for events that includes an event conflict document that has this exact information. Our conflicts this year are exactly the same as they are for nationals. So if you saw when nationals released their conflicts, they actually released them earlier this year than they had in years past. They are identical to our conflicts. We did not move any event groupings. We just chose some events to not run at most regionals. So how do we pick the red ones? We were intentional with the number. We tried to pick what we felt was like a good range. Last year, we ran 16 at most of our regionals. This year, we're running 17. It averages out to about 2 to 3 events per student for a team to theoretically cover every event. And we got feedback that that was actually really helpful for some teams, that were let them focus more and be more intentional in their preparation. Um, and we also know that we can like pretty easily cover this number of events at most regionals when it comes to event supervisors and volunteers through the community of teams and parents. We also were looking for like a balance of experience. So looking at both signature events, events that are there every year, and new ones. We thought about what the setup would be like for us on tournament days, but also that means the setup for you for practices. So a good example. Last year, we chose to run Chem Lab at all of our tournaments, but we only ran materials science at the National Ready Regional and the state tournament for Division C. We flipped it this year. Um, Part of that was because material science no longer has a pre-build. They didn't have to like build anything to bring and test. And we wanted to actually have more students have the experience with the like hands-on test of material science, and that barrier was eliminated for them having to prep something else to bring with them. Chem Lab is also an event that is a signature event. It's there every year, it just changes the topics. But we also know that that means it might be a little bit easier for a particular team to prepare for to get ready if they qualify for the state tournament, because it aligns more closely with things like an AP chemistry or IB chemistry class. So these were some of the decisions and what we talked about as a board when we were choosing which events we would only run at state and at the National Ready Regional. But they do change year to year, right? That was our key example of one that was a swap from last year. Okay. On the events page on our website, so you can get to that from going to middle and high school, and then there's an events page. If you haven't yet downloaded the rules, there's a link to the national page to do that. That's also got the link to our event conflicts page. And then you'll see that every event has a little block that you can click on. It tells you right there on the block which ones are only running at the National Ready Regional, which is at Mary Washington, and at the state tournament. It is very, very useful as a resource to actually go through and look at those event pages, or have your students go through and look at those event pages, because we post VASO specific clarifications, information that is important and unique to how we are going to run tournaments in Virginia. Okay, we do not follow national clarifications. Sometimes we will copy them and also make them VASO clarifications. But think of that as corrections or additional info to the published rule book for what your teams can expect at our tournaments. We also post links to additional resources. No, we don't release our tests. It doesn't matter how old they are, but we often link to some helpful sites, especially like there's a very wide like Science Olympiad community of resources that your students can find, and we've linked to some of those things that we like. For our build events, you also can access our build score sheets as we populate them, and get closer to competition. I believe there's already one up. I think Machines is already up. All right, questions about what I just shared with events. I know we're not going to get into the details of the events, but at least just about knowing where to access information for this year. That wait time, right? That's always a killer. When do we find out which regional we can attend? Ah, well, we're about to talk about regionals. Any advice on how to track time windows for registering invitationals? We'll talk about invitationals at the end. I've got some dates for you and some helpful resources. Anything about events, though? All right, let's talk tournaments. When you register for the season, you will give your preference for your regional tournament. That is part of the registration process. And the assignment of tournament sites is first come, first serve. So people who finish their registration early or earlier than others after the window opens on September 24th will more likely get their pick of their tournament site. So here are the four dates, five tournaments, sorry, for our regionals. So our schedule this year is a little more constrained than we feel like it has been in years past because of how some holidays have fallen. So just know that there's a reason why we've avoided some weekends because we have large school systems that made them into like 4-day weekends. So our first regional tournament hosted by Langley High School in Northern Virginia will be on January 24th. Centerville High School, who hosted last year and the year before, is returning to host on February 7th. On February 21st, we have our two like non-Nova regionals, one at Virginia Tech and one at Tandem Friends in Charlottesville. And then February 28th will be the University of Mary Washington National Ready Regional. All of these tournaments will have B and C options. We intend for, hopefully we have the space based on what we've looked at in terms of numbers from years past to accommodate geographically, like where teams are located, so that they can ideally go to a tournament that is, within a reasonable distance of their school site. So when you get to choose your location or put in your priorities, you'll be asked for like your top two like ranked preferences. Um, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we've adapted our capacity at our first two tournaments, Langley and Centerville, to address the overlap that happens on January 24th with the TJ Problem Solving Essay Administration. We know that many of our middle schoolers in Fairfax County, Arlington, Prince William, Loudoun will be participating in that problem solving essay administration. And so we've adjusted tournament size on the 24th to account for that. But I'll get more into that. We also, with our locations, are committing to continuing to support Blacksburg and Charlottesville area teams in both B and C, hoping to see some more growth in both of those regions. And then you also, in a way, get to choose your level of competition. So really the main choice there is the National Ready Regional that allows teams to opt into a highly competitive environment. I think last year with our first National Ready Regional, we definitely met that goal of a high level of competition. And then the other regionals, right, if you choose not to attend the National Ready Regional, allow teams to continue with that same regional experience of years past with a slightly reduced event slate. They allow more focus per event. And also, like I said, we intentionally chose some events to leave out of other regionals that may be more difficult to practice or maybe more expensive for teams like helicopter. So think about those options and what might work best for your team when you're choosing your dates. If you want to see specifics about the tournaments, we actually have um, So sorry. The question in the chat is, we can go to Mary Washington just because we want to, and we do not have to qualify. Yes, that is correct. I'll talk more about the how that works, but there you can put that as one of your choices. Um, any team can. So we've already published some tentative schedules for each of the tournaments, and you can access those if you're on that resources page. There's a link for tournaments, and if you click that, it takes you to actually a page of the portal, but it's a page you don't have to log in for. And you can see our list of tournaments. And so when you click tournament details, it'll take you to a page where you can see the tentative schedules of each of those tournaments. So some of them have slightly different start times. It's Tandem Friends and Virginia Tech start a little bit later in the day to allow for travel because our schools are a little more spread out there. And then you'll also notice something new on this page this year. There's a column now that says tracks. And you'll see that for some of the tournaments, it's just Division B or Division C. But for Langley and Centerville, we actually have different names for some different tracks. So you can see at Langley, we are running one Division B track and two Division C tracks. And I'll show you an example of that. But that means we're essentially running two C regionals at the same time at Langley. And then at Centerville, we're running two B regionals at the same time and then one C regional. And we made this decision intentionally to address the January 24th overlap with the TJSA administration. So here's kind of the overview of what I just said. January 24th, we will have one Division B regional of about 20 teams. And then at the same time, there will be two parallel C regionals of about 20 teams each. The reason why we chose to still continue offering a B regional, even though it's on the TJSA administration date, is because we have a lot of elementary schools that participate in Division B VASO. And this, like my hope, my dream would be that this would be an elementary school science Olympiad Division B regional. They'd be competing with students who are, similar grade to them rather than having to compete against the middle schools. And it would be an opportunity to have more elementary schoolers winning more medals than they might in a combined like middle elementary tournament like we normally see in other Division B regionals. So if you're an elementary school coach, I know it's the earliest date, but I would love to see those elementary school teams come out on January 24th and have an amazing experience at Langley. February 7th then to like account for that like imbalance because of the TJS administration, we now have two Division B tournaments at the same time and one Division C. So 20 teams in each track. We've named them. They are actually the names of our colors for our branding, which I love. And so that's where they come from, and you'll see them on the schedules, and I'll show you an example here in a second. For context, we expect then the Mary Washington regional to remain essentially exactly the same as it was last year, which is going to be one B regional, one C regional, but it's our biggest regional, 30 teams each, like in each division. For Virginia Tech and Tandem Friends, we just will see how many teams in those areas are interested. Last year, they were hovering around 10 at each regional, but we have capacity to hold more if we recruit more teams in those Blacksburg and Charlottesville areas. All right, so here's an example. This is a schedule for the Division C Langley Regional, which has two tracks happening at the same time. And you can access this, right? This is already linked on that tournament page, and that's true for all the tournaments. But because this one's two tracks, I wanted to use this as an example. You can see that we have the chlorophyll Division C regional of teams 1 through 20. And then we have the dark matter Division C regional of teams 21 through 40. They are two separate tournaments They will have different event supervisors. They will have different medals. Like they are not competing against each other. We're just using the opportunity to have two parallel tournaments so that we can still like accommodate 60 teams like we tend to do at our regionals, even though most of our middle schools will not participate because of the TJ entrance test. So when you're reading this schedule, you would just want to focus on like one track. You don't pick your track. I will assign your track. You just pick the day. And the same is true for Centerville for Division B, that it would look very similar to this with both tracks listed of like when they compete. But like, again, there's no overlap. Chlorophyll does not compete against dark matter. Chlorophyll only competes against chlorophyll. Dark matter only competes against dark matter. So we'll be presenting medals for two tracks. Like we'll have two first places in anatomy, one for chlorophyll and one for dark matter, at that evening's award ceremony. Okay. Um, Another thing that I want to highlight on this schedule is that it's a full day. So if you're new to Science Olympiad, this kind of shows you it is a full day commitment. Even if it's only a tournament with one track, like the sessions are running from the morning till the late afternoon, and then we have our award ceremony. So just know that when you as a coach are submitting for your team to register for a regional, or when you're recruiting parents to help you, that like it's a full day commitment. Okay. You won't know which track or which team number you have until registration is done. And then I'll populate that based on just the size of tournaments, right? We can adjust if we have fewer teams as needed. I did also want to show you that for Langley, right, this is one of the regionals that is only running 17 events. And so you can see there's only 17 events listed here. The schedule for Mary Washington would have more events listed since we're running all 23. And so, yes, to address the question in the chat, if your team is strongly interested in Write It, Do It and wants to be able to do it at both regionals and should they qualify at state, Mary Washington is the only place that we're running Write It, Do It in Division B for regionals. So that can definitely play in some of your decision making about what regional you select. But just know that all of those events will take place at our state tournament should your team qualify. So I did mention a couple times that teams do have to provide event supervisors. So like I said, this can be parent volunteers, this can be coaches, it could be other adult community members. Um, these event supervisors are setting up, administering, and grading the events. We're not asking them to write a test. I have more specific expectations I will lay out for you. Once we get closer to that, I want to get through registration as our first hurdle. And we do already have that, like, what is an event supervisor video, but just keep that like on your radar that we will be asking teams to provide event supervisors. We're going to actually ask them this year in pairs. So like, if your school is assigned to provide an event supervisor for Disease Detectives B, then we'll have two people from your school. So like they have their assistant proctor automatically, like assistant event supervisor. Okay. Um, and then also we have like shift volunteers that will be shorter amounts of time that we'll have teams sign up for closer to tournament date. This structure is specific to VASO tournaments. So when we say that we ask you to provide event supervisors, but they don't have to write a test, that is only true at VASO tournaments, at regionals and state. That may not be true at other invitational tournaments. And so how they talk about event supervisors may include writing a test. So for all of those specific things with tournaments outside of our organization, you'll want to clarify with their tournament directors what is being asked of your team. If you are a school in the Blacksburg area or a school in the Charlottesville area, you do benefit from being close to two of our like partner organizations, our alumni groups at Virginia Tech and University of Virginia, that they help us with supporting those regional tournaments at those smaller sites. So the Virginia Tech Regional, obviously Virginia Tech is hosting it and supporting it. For the past few years where we've had that, this has meant that those teams don't have to provide event supervisors. They get covered by the Virginia Tech Science Olympiad at Virginia Tech group. And the same is true for the Tandem Friends School. Last year was our first regional tournament there, and we were able to cover the events through the Science Olympiad at University of Virginia students. So just know that the asks of what event supervisors will be a little different or completely eliminated at those tournaments that are at those smaller sites closer to those universities. All right, now we're gonna spend a little bit more time talking about the National Ready Regional. This was something new that we did last year, inspired by kind of a similar setup to something that North Carolina does. And we got really positive feedback about it, especially from our highly competitive teams that really wanted that like competitive environment. Like they got it at the National Ready Regional. University of Mary Washington is going to be hosting this again for us. We've loved working with them in the past for a number of years for our regionals, and really thrilled that we're going to have the National Ready Regional there again. So that'll be on February 28th. And remember, this is the only regional where we are running the full slate of events, all 23 in each division. At all of the other regional tournaments, Langley, Centerville, Tana Friends, Virginia Tech, we're only running those 17 out of the 23 that are on their schedules. Okay. How the National Ready Regional works is, well, first, we offer all the events. So that's one key difference. But schools that took home trophies at the 2025 state tournament, should they choose to attend this National Ready Regional, they receive an automatic bid to state. So the top 5 schools in Virginia Science Olympiad last year, we invite them to select the University of Mary Washington Regional. And should they do that, they don't have to worry about qualifying for state. They automatically do. The remaining spots at that tournament are for anyone who wants it. Okay. And remember that regional site choices are accommodated in order of registration completion. Um, so last year it ended up like in Division C that it was like 50% of the spaces were available for teams who wanted to attend the National Ready Regional that like that hadn't like automatically qualified with a trophy. So I think it was slightly more than that for Division B. So over half of the teams at the tournament will be ones who choose and are still competing for a state bid, um, but don't have the automatic bid. So here's an example of the Division B UMW regional schedule. You can see that, sure enough, this one looks a little longer because we have all 23 events. And you can see that it's also written to have 30 teams that are all competing against each other. There's no separate tracks. Um, and so 30B, 30C. And again, a full day. So the biggest question that we addressed last year regarding the National Ready Regional was how this affects state qualification. And luckily, it worked the way we expected it to work with what our vision was. And so the answer is that it doesn't really affect state qualification, which was a good thing for sure. So this is also going to be where I provide a little context to how we determine state invitations. VASO always has decided, like once registration is complete, the number of state bids coming from each regional. So what we look at essentially is how many schools did we have register for this year's season in a particular division. And then we confirm how many schools we're going to bring to the state tournament, which is usually somewhere around 24. Um, that seems to be like a good number in each division for us based on where we've been hosting them for the past number of years. So we look then at like okay, what percentage of schools then does that represent? And we then apply that percentage to each of our regional tournaments. Now, obviously, it's never going to work out exactly. We have to like either round up or round down, but we make those decisions and then we publish that information on the tournament details page of the portal website. And so again, it's by school, not by team. Um, but so the only thing that was new in the National Ready Regional was that when we made that determination of like how many bids, like overlaying that percentage, we took the automatic bids from UMW out of that. And so I have an example from last year of how this worked to show you what I mean. So this is what happened last year in Division C. We had 39 schools compete in all the other regionals except UMW. Okay. So 16 out of those 39 at Langley, sorry, not Langley, Fairfax, Centerville, Tandem Friends, and Virginia Tech, 16 of those schools earned state bids overall. So that was about 41%. And we distributed those bids proportionally based on the number of schools at each tournament, doing our best to like get it as close to 41% as possible. Again, rounding up or rounding down as needed because I can't have a fraction of a team qualify. So, for example, Centerville had 13 Division C schools compete last year at their regional, and 5 of them earned bids to state. Okay, so 5 out of 13 is a little bit lower than 41%, again, rounding. So that's how we handled, we've always done it that way. But then, specifically for UMW, how we handled the National Ready Regional was we actually had all 5 of our 2024 trophy schools accept their automatic bid to state and attend the UMW regional, which was awesome. And I like the feedback I've gotten from all those teams was that it was great. They like they were happy with their decision for those 5 schools. So they had won a trophy at the 2024 state tournament, all 5 of them in Division C, then came to Mary Washington. There was an additional 8 Division C schools that competed at Mary Washington. So what we did was we took that proportion, that 41%-ish, and applied it just to those 8 schools. So we took those 5 automatic bids out of the equation. So there were still bids to be had in the same proportion at the Mary Washington National Ready Regional. So we had 3 additional state bids that were earned across those 8 schools at UMW. Hopefully that other questions on that. I know that seems that it's like a lot to process, but that is how, I mean, it worked successfully. And we had so 8 total schools out of Mary Washington go to state. 5 had already known that they had automatically qualified. Okay, if you are a new coach, the results, if you, I know you're curious about the results from last year, tournament results are available online. We use Duosmium, so you can see who those top 5 schools are. And so in both B and C, those schools will have that opportunity. Um, so yeah, sorry, I read the thing in the chat. So your percentage chance is the same no matter which tournament you pick. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, like I said, there's a little bit of fluctuation because I can't have a fraction of a team, but yeah. So you really should be making the decision about the level of competition that you want and also what works best for your team in terms of date and location. end those events if you're really excited about events that we're only running at Mary Washington. The state qualification piece should really be taken out of that decision. Like we've tried to take it out of that decision for you and keep it as even as possible while still giving those highly competitive teams that are seeking a national bid, giving them the opportunity to like have some good competition and see how they stack up. All right. Some other things related to just all of regionals and how this plays out with the tracks and with the National Ready Regional. I don't think this is anyone's focus going into Science Olympiad, but here's the information about what we do with medals and trophies. Um, so when we award medals, trophies, and bids to state at Langley and Centerville that have like parallel tracks, those will be separated, right? They compete separately, they win medals separately, they win trophies separately, they get state bids separately. Um, what we commit to is that we give a minimum of 4 medals per event at any tournament, assuming that we have 4 teams compete in an event. And then anything above that number that we will award, we calculate like the number of medals will be 20% of the number of competing teams for all regionals except the National Ready. For National Ready, we increase that proportion based on the number of teams advancing to state with those like automatic bid teams. So like last year, at our 30 team regionals, we gave 6 medals, right? That's 20%. But at the National Ready Regional, we gave more than 6 to account for the higher proportion of schools going to state because of the automatic bids, not because it was a greater chance to go to state. We just had the automatic bids. So we gave like 8 or 9 in those divisions. For trophies, um, we give a maximum of 5 per tournament track. Uh, we will actually, if there's fewer than 5 state bids coming out of a tournament, we'll match the number of trophies to the number of state bids. And a 6th trophy will only be awarded if all 5 of the trophy winning state teams in a division accept their bid, which happened last year in Division C. So we gave 6 trophies in the Division C tournament at Mary Washington. There's a good question in the chat. If you have a trophy school, so they won a trophy at last year's state tournament, um, and they don't get in the top 5 at UMW, would they still get the auto bid? Yes, they do. So they don't have to earn the state bid if they go to Mary Washington. But that's only if they took home a trophy from the state tournament last year. If that school chooses to not go to Mary Washington, then they have to qualify just like every other school does at their other regional tournament. But the automatic bid is guaranteed for those 5 schools in each division should they choose Mary Washington as their regional site. All right. Other regionals questions. We will talk about invitationals. I have a brief thing about the state tournament. But for regional stuff, are there any questions? All right. For state, our location is still pending. I think I said this before. We're working to bring it back to University of Virginia. We're hoping that will happen. It's just not like locked in yet. But the date, whether it's at UVA or somewhere else, will be March 21st. Like no matter what, that's the date. Okay. We are once again offering gold bids this season. We've done that the past 2 years. That's been really awesome and successful. For those of you that are new, gold bids are the only way in which a team of students can qualify and compete at the state tournament, even if their whole team doesn't qualify. So they have to win first place in their regional event. And then if their team also does not get an overall state spot, those students get invited just to compete in that gold winning event at the state tournament. So we've had a handful of them each year, which is really awesome. On our policies page, or it's actually also linked on the tournament details page, there's a whole document about qualifying for VASO states. And there's like more information there about gold bids and about our state qualification process. Um, Again, I know that shouldn't be like the goal in anyone's mind necessarily, but it is helpful information and you may have students ask about it. So there's some good examples included in that of how that works. But we've had a number of them every year and it's been really fun to see. Also, put it on your radar that the national tournament this year will take place at the University of Southern California over Memorial Day weekend, May 22nd and 23rd. And we don't know and won't know yet whether we get to send one team in each division or two teams in each division. We don't know that usually until the very beginning of April. So we will not know that by the beginning or by our state tournament. This process is dependent upon the registration numbers in each state. So we are guaranteed one bid in Division B and one bid in Division C. After that, the top 10 programs in each state, or sorry, the top 10 programs in each division are awarded a second bid. So there's 60 teams that compete in each division at the national tournament. We have been lucky enough to have such a strong program in Virginia that we have had two Division B teams qualify for the past few years. That's never guaranteed year to year because even if our registration is just as good or better than it was last year, it depends on how other states do as well. In Division C, we've never outright qualified for two spots, but it has happened in the past like 4 years each year that other states have declined their bids and we've been able to send a second Division C team. But we don't know this stuff until April. This is not us like hiding information. Like we don't know until Nationals tells us. All right. So that's kind of an overview of like all the big things ahead for the season. And we will have other coach calls and opportunities to connect to talk about the details as they're needed. So the details right now that are needed is the registration. Registration opens on Wednesday, September 24th. On Wednesday, September 24th, you will be able to go to our coach portal website. There's a login like drop down on our website to go to the Division BC portal and make an account. So every single coach will need to make an account. We wiped them all this summer. You can use the same email address if you've made an account in the past. But you'll make an account, you'll associate it with a school. I will approve the account. And then you'll be able to add in your number of teams and go through the rest of the registration checklist. So there is nothing that you can do in the portal until the 24th. Okay. But then the portal is where you'll be doing a lot of stuff as we prepare for the season, where you'll submit registration payment if you're choosing to pay by card, where you'll put in your tournament preferences. Later on, it's where you're going to submit your event supervisors. Closer to tournament day, it's where we're going to have you put in your student roster, like make your student rosters. So all of that lives in the portal. What you can do before that, though, is you can get the forms signed by your principal. You have to sign them too. And then also you can, figure out whatever you need for registration payment. So this checklist it's like the first page of the registration packet on our website. And many of you, if not all of you, have already done the Google form. So thank you for those of you that submitted it. It is helpful so that I can know that I have correct contact information to send emails and updates. And then that step 2 about making accounts in the portal, that's what starts on the 24th of September. Yeah, and like our portal doesn't open. We don't have a way to track the forms until the 24th. So get those forms ready, hold them. You could even schedule the email to send on the 24th. Just don't already send it to us. Because our portal is still like we're still getting it ready. And that's where we like track all the forms. So you'll get those forms ready, send them to us starting on the 24th. The email there, registration@virginiaso.org. And then, like I said, after I approve your account, I'll you send your forms, I'll put that in that we've received your forms in the portal. You enter your number of teams. You can generate um, an invoice. You can pay it either by check or by card. We really do prefer if you pay by card via PayPal. That's also faster for you. And you'll know with certainty that it's done or like when it's done, when we've received it. And then we'll finalize like those regional assignments. I'll do them as people complete registration. So the sooner you register, the soon like after the 24th, the sooner you know what your tournament date is. And also keep in mind that we don't have any invitationals in Virginia at the moment that are taking place before our registration closes. Registration closes on Wednesday, December 3rd. But if you're participating in invitational tournaments in other states or satellite tournaments that take place in October or November, your registration with VASO has to be completed before the day of that invitational competition. So just get it done as early as you can before any of your teams compete in anything. There's a question in the chat about should we communicate to school and students to pick their events? Probably where most teams are right now, up until the 24th, is to like recruit and get their team set. How you choose to like assign events will probably be dependent upon like once you've got your like your final team roster maybe. Um, and then you could solicit preferences from students, but then you'll need to like spend some time making sure that like you can't have seven kids choose anatomy. So you'll have to like decide who's in what events, like, and then look at their other preferences. So I would really encourage you to watch our event assignments video that goes through that in detail if you're at a place already with your team where you're ready to make those event assignments. It is totally okay if your team is not there. If I were still coaching, I wouldn't have even had my interest meeting yet because late buses haven't started at our schools. So don't feel rushed on that part. I don't need like your rosters aren't going to be done until like January from my perspective, right? You're not giving that information to me until then. So, okay. For those registration forms, I just want to point out a couple things on here for you. As head coach, I just want to make sure that you read on the registration form the duties that you are accepting, and that your principal is acknowledging you will do. So you're the VASO point of contact. You're responsible for receiving my communications and relaying relevant information to your students, to their families, to your admin as needed. You are in charge of managing the selection of your team and the organization of your students into teams and events with partners. That lies with you. Um, you oversee team preparation, including securing team volunteers. Um, you're responsible for supervising student competition on site for the duration of the tournament day. Um, and that they're following all the VASO policies. So you sign that, your principal signs that. If you are not a teacher at the school or not a staff member, we do encourage that you find a school-based sponsor to connect with, and they can also sign off and receive my communications. What is meant to form team for ESO? We need, sorry, as I'm reading it in the chat. What is meant to form a team for Science Olympiad? We need to communicate and gather students' interests and names and their top 3 preferences. All of this needs to be done or at least started before the 24th. No, you can register for your school and not know a single kid who's going to compete with you. I mean, it'd be nice to know if you have interest, but when we when you submit these forms, you're not saying your team is already completed with events assigned everything. You're just saying we've paid, we're we're going to compete, and by the time our regional tournament comes around, I'll have my students assigned in events. This can be quite a long process. And so like I said, those there's some good videos that I've created about like the event assignments and the flow of the year for coaches. I think I talk about that in the What is Science Olympiad video. So I would encourage you to check those out, especially if you're a new coach, because it does like more deliberately walk through like the pace of the year. So, like I said, for me, I was usually when I was coaching in high school, do like an interest meeting at the end of September. Depending on the interest level at your school, you may have to do a tryout. Not all schools have to have that. I just taught at a very large school. Um, so I would do tryouts in October. Then selecting my team members, I would focus, like, I focused more on just like knowing who was going to be part of my team. And then we would work on assigning them events so that they had partners, so that I was covering the range of events because I wanted to. I fielded full teams, but that was like taking me through October. And then November, they would actually like start preparing for their events. And the timeline is not something that is like set in stone. That's just what worked for my school. Um, and it really just is dictated by when your first competition is. So if your first competition is going to be maybe the only competition, the regional tournament, you have until like winter break, depending on like how quickly you're able to get student interest, how frequently you're meeting as a team, etc. All of that is stuff that you get to decide. But yeah, you don't have to have it already figured out by the 24th. That that would be impressive. I think most coaches, maybe I'd venture to say no coaches, have that all done. Yes, you do need to know how many teams you'll be having. If you don't if you add a team later, it doesn't guarantee that we have room in the same regional that you registered for. So it is helpful before the 24th or before you submit your registration paperwork to know how many teams, one, two, or three. Um, so that is, yes, probably helpful to figure out sooner rather than later. Okay, some other things I want to just highlight on the registration forms. Again, you should read them thoroughly yourself before you sign them. But again, we expect that school-approved adult representatives are on site for the duration of your team's presence at a tournament location. So keep that in mind when you're picking your tournament date. It doesn't have to be you the whole time. It's great if it is because we that's our assumption unless we hear otherwise. Um, but there, we've had people swap out, but it has to be like school approved volunteer. So don't pick a tournament date that you're out of town um, as the coach. We also have a variety of policies that your principal and you are agreeing to uphold. Um, when you sign these forms, including policies regarding cheating and misconduct, parent participation, and our cleanup policy. All of these are on our website and are worth going through and reviewing. In particular, though, I do talk in detail about the parent participation policy in one of the mentor parent videos on the resources page about like how they can and cannot be involved. In their students' Science Olympiad experience. So, especially for our Division B teams, would really encourage new coaches to watch that video, and also even for veteran coaches to like share that video resource with your team members' parents. Okay, so that's the form part, and then the other part is registration fees. That's really the two things that you have to like have other people get handled for you at your school site to be registered. The rest of it is just in the portal with us. But registration fees, this is also linked on our website. You can see that there are two discount opportunities One of them is if you are a new team outside of Northern Virginia, you may be eligible for the VASO Outreach Initiative, where the first year the registration fee is waived, and the second year it's reduced by 50%. The list of ineligible counties is available on the full pricing structure document. We also offer discounts for schools that have a high economically disadvantaged student population. So if your school is classified as a Title I school, if they've adopted the community eligibility provision, or if they have 49% or more of their students eligible for free or reduced meal pricing, we offer a 50% registration discount. You can see that our structure, you can register for up to 3 teams for regionals. If you have so many students interested in Science Olympiad and you as the coach are willing to support more than 45 students, we do allow that you can register for additional invitational only teams. So what I mean by this is there are some invitationals, especially satellite ones, where they'll let you register for 5 teams because different states have different parameters, and also invitationals are independent anyway. So if you have like 70 kids and you want them all to do a tournament together, you can do that, but you have to pay us for those teams because we have to register them with nationals. So that's just an option. However, let's say, for example, that you intend to field 2 teams for regionals, but you're going to do 3 teams at an invitational tournament. You have to register for 3 teams with Virginia. You have to pay the regional price. We don't do an invitational only pricing um, until you've already got 3 regional teams. So there's a whole note about that at the bottom. Just want you to be aware of that. We had some issues with that last year. Okay, question in the chat. Does each team have to participate in all events or can they do only 5 of the 17? Teams can, you are not required to do all 17 events or all 23 if you go to Mary Washington. You can register and do as many of the events as your team would like. Your team is going to have a much stronger chance of state qualification if they do all of the events. But we have teams, especially schools that field like one full team and then like a second small team. Those second small teams, every year we have schools that only do like a handful of events. So if it's worth it for you all to include more students, even if you don't have another full team of 15, you can still register that team and they can just do as many events as you'd like. So here's a little bit more about the outreach initiative. To be eligible for this opportunity, has to be a middle or a high school in their first or second year of participation. And then the areas that are not eligible, because this is all about trying to like expand beyond Northern Virginia. If your school is in Alexandria City, Arlington County, Falls Church City, Fairfax County, or Loudoun County, you are not eligible for the outreach initiative. But everywhere else in Virginia, if you're a new school, we'd love to have you, and our donor will cover your registration fee for your first year. Along with the registration process, if you are a Division C coach, a lot of Division C teams utilize a student leadership structure where you might have captains or officers. And we allow high school club officers to access the registration tools like in the portal. So not middle schoolers, only high schoolers, and we ask that they have a generic officer's email. We do not want, and actually I will decline any personal email addresses of a high schooler. So it needs to be something that has a generic officer's email. So like you can pass it on year to your officers. So for example, my alma mater is Blue Valley West. You can have Blue Valley West Siali at gmail.com. And so it's not unique to a particular student. It's just the officers that you have that year can access this email. And notably, you can access that email. You should also have the password to access that. Student leaders can all check the account, or they could set it up to forward to their personal accounts, but we only want to communicate to high school club officers if it's through a generic officer email. Okay. And like I said, they can have um, uh, access in the portal. Okay. Okay. Any other registration questions before we wrap it up with talking about some invitational stuff? Oh, yes. Thank you for clarifying, Karen. I wasn't sure that was what that was referencing. Regarding the outreach initiative, it does say in the specifics that it covers one team. So if you are new and going to field more than one team, we only cover the registration cost for one team um, through that. Thank you. For those of you that don't know, Karen Evans is in the chat and she's the chair of the VASO board. So I appreciate always having her on these calls so she can remind me of those crucial details. Okay. Invitationals. I know there were a handful of questions about invitationals that were popping up in the chats because we've already got some traction going on invitationals in Virginia for this season so far. So, to be clear, for those of you that are new, when I say invitational, what this is referring to is an independently run tournament. So, VASO does not run them, and they are available like across the country. We have invitationals that do take place in Virginia run by other organizations. And then also, when you register with us and we register with nationals on your behalf, like you can also compete in invitationals put on by organizations outside Virginia. But just know that since they're completely independent, they can really do whatever they want with them. They could have a different format. They could have a different schedule. They could run different events. Some of them add on their own unique events for that state. And they're pretty much always have an additional cost for your team. So it is not included in the registration fee for Virginia for VASO. Okay. When you register with us, that's for regionals. And then it also covers state should your team qualify. But does not cover any invitational fees. Those are independent and you pay them to the invitational hosts. Okay. Depending on the format, the price range is anywhere from $50 to $200. That doesn't include travel if you're choosing to travel for a tournament. But every invitational sets their own pricing structure. They are completely optional. So it is totally within your power to decide whether or not you will do invitationals as a coach. Um, you can just do regionals, and that is completely acceptable. Um, but if you are looking for more opportunities for practice or to get, just more experience, it does work nicely that they expand your students' season. Most invitationals happen like November through February, so they can be before or around your regional date, depending on what days you pick. Um, and so, yeah, it's just a way to expand tournament opportunities. And so we have teams in Virginia that never attend invitationals. We have teams in Virginia that travel, 10 hours to other states for invitationals. So, wide range of experiences, totally dependent upon your team and what you're really willing to commit to. If you ever have questions about invitationals, beyond the information that I'm going to show you in the next couple slides, you should assume I know nothing about them. And so please contact those invitational directors directly rather than VASO. Like, other than publicizing them, and on occasion, because I know some of the directors volunteering to help at their invitationals, um, we don't have anything to do with it. So they are separate, and you should email them separately. But here's what I do know. Here's our tentative Virginia invitational schedule. Most of them are actually like pretty solid. The only ones that are tentative are UVA is still kind of figuring out like what they want to do. They've talked about maybe offering a satellite invitational in November. For those of you that don't know what that means, it's where you like stay at your school and can compete online with like written tests. So you don't have to travel to Charlottesville for that. Again, that's still tentative. Last I checked with them, they were targeting maybe November 22nd, or whatever that Saturday is for that opportunity. They are also trying to navigate if they can offer an in-person invitational in January, but I haven't heard an update about that. If it does happen, it would be the 17th. The ones I do know about for sure, and most of them are already posted in some capacity on our website. First one, December 6th, is the West Springfield Lake Braddock Division B Invitational. So this is not a new tournament. This is the Lake Braddock Invitational that has been offered since 2019. But the West Springfield has partnered with them. They did this last year, and now West Springfield will be hosting it. And part of the reason, as you'll see later, is that Lake Braddock is actually going to host a Division A tournament for us in April. So they're trying to like spread the love there. Their registration opens Wednesday, October 8th. December 13th is our first Division C Invitational that's currently scheduled in the state of Virginia, and that's being hosted by the Flint Hill School in Oakton. Their registration is now open. And then coming soon after that, January 10th, the annual Fairfax Division C Invitational, their registration opens on Monday, September 8th. So this coming Monday. I am thrilled to see more Division B invitationals popping up. I've felt like there's been, there's a lot more C interest, especially through colleges, and I get that. But I'm really, really happy that the January 10th and January 17th options on here also include Division B. So Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology is going to be hosting a Division B Invitational. Their registration will open Thursday, October 9th. They don't their website will be updated shortly with information on that. They were still just ironing out some of the additional details, but they've, given themselves about a month to do that. So just check back. If I have an update on that when registration opens, I will be sure to send that out. Like when our VASO registration opens, I'll put that in the email. Same thing with Academies of Loudoun. They are hosting a Division B Invitational. They intend for that to be January 17th. Their registration is set to open Monday, October 13th, and they also have a website linked. And then January 31st, Virginia Tech will be hosting a Division C Invitational once again on their campus in Blacksburg, and I'm really excited for that one. I'm gonna try to go. We'll see. Just because like it's on a long weekend for me and for many schools in Fairfax County. So check it out. It'll be a nice trip. On our website, we have a full invitationals page. So we post all the Virginia invitationals, and then we often have other invitationals reach out to us from out of state that would like us to post on our website. And so those are in blue, but there are many, many others. And so there are two key resources. So one is the National Science Olympiad page does have like a long regularly updated list of invitationals. And then also a really cool tool that has been added on that we were notified from California about is an invitational map that they like keep up. So you can see like search by date, search by format, search by division. That's also linked there, that invitational map link. Okay, but this is where we'll just like post links to, like I said, all the Virginia invitationals as they come, and then the out of state ones that get posted are just ones that have asked us, but there are many, many more for you to peruse through the national site or through that invitational map. The question in the chat, just for the sake of the recording, I know it was answered in the chat already. The question was, if you register 3 teams for regionals, but only like want to bring 2 to an invitational, is that okay? And the answer is yes. You can always register for fewer teams at invitationals than what you've registered for with us. And a lot of teams do that. A lot of big schools that are able to field three teams, especially if they're planning to travel for tournaments, maybe like that particular weekend that Duke is hosting their invitational, like only 30 of your kids can go out of the 45. Well, then just register for two teams. Or I know some coaches that say, I'm only going to take two teams, and it's just whoever, like first come, first serve. Let me know if you want to go. Obviously, part of that as well, when there's travel, is, the cost to your students and their families, the ability to fund field trips, and those are things that you have to decide. But you can always take fewer teams to invitationals than what you register for regionals with. All right, other questions about invitationals? All right. The last thing I want to mention to you all, I put this in the like welcome email, but I just wanted to keep this on your radar as well. We are really, really excited that our Division A program is growing quite significantly. Had a huge bump in growth last year. We expect that again this year. And so as a result of that, we're making some changes that we think can actually really bring some excitement to our like Division C and even some of our Division B students, even after regionals and state is done. So we're transitioning to spring tournaments for our Division A, our elementary school division for grades 3 through 5. And those tournaments are going to be after our state tournament. So state is March 21st. We are going to be hosting some gigantic Division A tournaments April 18th and April 25th. We've designed it so they can have capacity for like up to 60 teams at a time. Like theirs are not like full day for a given team. It's like 60 in the morning, 60 in the afternoon. Um, in years past, we've already had some Division C teams support these tournaments. In particular, Langley for a number of years and TJ for the past year. Um, like took this on and hosted our Division A tournaments in the fall, where their team members were acting as event supervisors. And now we're looking to be able to expand that opportunity and kind of continue, right? Extend Division C students' seasons with an opportunity for them to now be on the other side and like see what it's like to be an event supervisor. So just wanted to put that on your radar. That we're hoping your students might be excited about that they can, directly work with the next generation of Science Olympiad competitors. And we'll have more information as that gets closer. I think we're even going to do some like info opportunities at our regional tournaments to see which Division C students might be willing to sign up and spend some time with us supervising some elementary school events. If your students are curious, our Division A events are all on our VASO website. We have our own unique Virginia set of rules for these tournaments, so they can check those out. They'll see a lot of parallels with the things that they do when they're older in B and C. All right. That's what I've got for you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please know that at any time you can reach out to me via email if you have any questions. This is certainly not the last time we'll be talking. We'll have some opportunities throughout the months before tournaments to just connect about, answering questions you may have as you form your teams and get your events set, finishing registration, seeking event supervisors. And then once tournament season starts, I'll be in contact with all the things that you need to do to be ready on tournament day. And then we get to see each other in person at tournaments. So I'm looking forward to that. I'll stick around for those of you that are watching live to answer any questions off recording. But otherwise, looking forward to a great season of Science Olympiad with all of you. Thanks so much for joining us again. And we'll talk soon.